Thinza Shunlei, who also wears a number of hats, quite a few actually, and I think though one of the most striking things, Shunlei, when I interviewed you and you've pushed this message home about how the real game changer and the new thing about all the resistance we're seeing now is youth, and also some of the other points. So please, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And also, I truly appreciate to each of you for you show up today. Today means a lot to us. It's such a day that we commemorate our resistance and our resilience and our extreme oppression by the same institution for the past 7 decades. And also thinking of all the oppressed people, including Rohingya populations, I truly appreciate your continued solidarity with the people of Myanmar. And at the same time, today I want to pay my tributes to all the fallen heroes and heroines, because I take this opportunity to express an opinion. Also today, I want you to remember and go out from Jiaobadao, from Mandalay region, where this noon he set himself to death on fire in a way to protest the junta. He left a note to all of us that he mentioned, may all the people of Myanmar have 24-hour electricity, and we don't want to go back to 2001 and 2003.
Are you okay, Shunlei? Are you okay? Yeah, she's talking about the self-immolation case today.
Yes, this is the first immolation case ever recorded, and I was so shocked. Today it was the silent strikes. Everyone went in silence, and so that case clearly show the current situation of the people living inside country, and all different, even though they keep on resisting and in all different forms, with every possible way they join in the silent strike despite all the different difficulties. But it's already been a year, so I want everyone to reflect on what had been wrong since the very beginning. This was also one of the first questions when the military staged a coup on 1st February on 2021. I also asked myself, what went wrong since the very beginning? Because we have done everything we can to work for a federal democratic nation with all the possible channels and mechanisms, including panel peace agreement, where all the current leaders and all the other different ethnic revolution leaders, they try to shake hands with the military, but things have gone wrong. And I think this is a moment where every international actor, including the governments, have to ask themselves what was wrong from the very beginning. So as I'm asked today to present about the game changer of the young population, I would say our young generation, who are 60% of the population, they are already there resisting the political framework. They didn't agree with 2008 constitution. And I remember last year, 2021, in the January and December, I remember some of the student activists were jailed to 7 years in prison because they protested against the Rakhine crisis, and they were asking military to stop all violences, including Rohingya crisis. But these young people's voices were not heard enough. They were not seen enough. Now we talk about Generation Z, young people on the front line and all sorts of things.
Shunlei, I think the sound is cutting out a little bit. If maybe you can adjust the microphone or something.
Yeah, I turn off my earpiece.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, maybe that's better.
The young generations, they have been there since the very beginning, but they were not hard enough, seen enough. But now we talk about the Generation Z, we talk about the young people at the front lines, all sort of things, only because they are there getting killed and getting arrested. They were the first to target it by the military, all the students. For example, 31st January mark 91st anniversary of the founding of Yangon University Student Union. They've been keeping principal politics all along, but they were largely neglected. Now, these young generations lost a formal platform to discuss their political ideas and opinions. Even now, today, in the revolution, they are not yet in the decision-making position. They are still on the ground fighting as a soldier, on the street protesting, getting killed, and always hiding in fear and sort of thing. So I would say the lack of consistent platforms for the voices of young people, led by young people, also the lack of safe spaces for the young human rights defenders and activists inside and outside country, the lack of policy and laws that can guarantee the young people voices will be integrated in the decision-making level, the lack of security and capacity to input young youth voices in the international mechanism. I appreciate that you are inviting young person and young woman and women, including this panel, but are we sure they are all in other different international platforms and where their voices be heard? So at the same time, the lack of knowledge, the young people, we were trained and we were kind of living through this military propaganda, but also the young people, surprisingly, were the ones who broke the silence and who took a strong stand against all forms of dictatorship and fascism and supremacist chauvinistic idea. They are still leading. And as we see this revolution, we have three main front lines. As you see, the armed resistance, it has been there since 7 decades ago. Also, the political resistance by different political stakeholders, such as NUG, NUCC, and different other ethnic arms and the revolutionary organizations. At the same time, there is another one big front line that we miss to, normally we forget to mention, is the ideological revolution. So all the front line must be guided by the rightful ideologies and to replace the ideology that been instilled in our society, deeply embedded in our society for so many years and decades by the militaries. So now the young generations are all taking up different platforms, risking, and they are saying things under their name, risking their security to replace these ideology. They are on ground, you can see, and I truly encourage you to listen to the protester and also ground strike committee members and so on. And another thing is, when we look at the root causes of the situation in the country, we shouldn't forget the first is there is no justice and accountability taken by the leaders in the past or the present. That's one main thing that we see. And the second is the fascism is rising up. There were different signs and signals, but we tend to forget and ignore. So the fascism is taking place into a new form under the name of national security or nationalisms. And that's one main idea. The military is now binding itself inside the military, trying to keep the soldier not to defect or so. So these are the main ideologies. Also, not just inside military, but also we could see this in our society as well. And the third thing is the racism, the ultra-nationalism, the chauvinistic idea, also the oppression and discrimination against ethnic minorities and religious minorities, the rise of militarism. And the fourth thing is the lack of the will, political will, genuine political will for the federal democratic nation. So these are the main root causes. And at the same time, when we talk about the root causes, young people reflected on this, and we have raised our three finger with three key demands. And we still keep these demands with us: to end all forms of dictatorship, to abolish the 2008 Constitution and to form federal democratic nation. Also, we have three key demands. In this first anniversary of the Spring Revolution, we also demand international community and everyone who are affiliating with the military and affiliated businesses and their affiliations, we ask to cut the cash, also cut the arm flow to the military, as well as cut the impunity. So as our young generations, our biggest demand is justice and accountability for a newer nation. So now we are seeing leadership of other different nations like US, Canada, UK, and EU imposing sanctions and on businesses and targeted sanctions on different individuals. But we don't see the leadership for justice and accountability. We need to see this year in 2022. So that's the main thing. As well as when we talk about the revolution, we want to make sure that NUCC or NUG or any forms of revolution, we have to go in a collective leadership. And that's what is so challenging. People Assembly being convinced, but of course there are many different challenges, including the trust issue. It will take time, but this is the only path. And at the same time, there are other different international actors. For example, last night we have heard of the Dr. Norleen Hazer interview talking about power sharing. And because the military is in control and we need to compromise and sort of this idea. This is not the first time we heard from different international developments. I wonder, have they ever reflected on what was wrong in the very beginning and what gave the power to the military to stage a coup after committing genocide 4 years ago, after committing countless crimes several decades ago? So I feel like the international community have not yet reflected on themselves and their action, and they keep repeating the same narrative of sharing the power with the military. We strongly condemn this kind of narration because we see military itself is being charged and accused of genocide and other different crimes in different international court. And as a UN Special Envoy speaking out as such, did not fit with what the UN stand for and what UN is for. So I think it's so important to know the military is a perpetrator, not a political stakeholder for new nation. They are the criminals to be held accountable. This is what the ground strike committee and young people are trying to make sure, trying to give you the message every day, getting on the street, risking their life to ensure you don't give legitimacy in any forms, even with that narrative that we put on different media, naming the military as the ruler or NUG as the shadow government. This is harmful to the revolution. So I hereby call all to ensure you repeat and you kind of check back with the narrative you are putting on to inform your audience, because the revolution it's only 1 year for the Spring Revolution, but for Karen people, for Kachin people, for other different minorities, it has been decades and decades. Now is the time we all put all our effort to ensure that the power is with us, and all the military, not just in Myanmar, around the world, shouldn't be inspired by the action of the military just because they have bigger end power. They are in the position as a political stakeholder. This is not fair for the country, and this is exactly why democracy is backsliding this year. So let's hold each other accountable, especially international government, even journalists, even media. We need to hold each other accountable. This is how I think we can never return to February or January 31st, 2021, because now this revolution is trying to normalize the resistance. We are going for a new normal, even amid all these depressive news. We're going for a new normal. We can't go back to an old normal. So I reject all the other different efforts by different stakeholders who are trying to lead us to the backward. You know, we don't want to repeat the same saga anymore. We need a breakthrough with a new thinking for a new federal democratic nations. Thank you so much.
And then Shunlei.